Overflowing rivers, flooded basements, dams. Damn the dams.
Mixed with blood.
The war in Ukraine has taken a turn. It's got a whole bunch of layers of water rippling through flooded areas, sizable quantities of farming territory. So there's not only Ukraine suffering from the floods of having their properties inundated and people needing to be saved and escaped and farm animals having to be rounded up and saved from the floods. It's an intentional act of war. Russia blows 2 dams in Ukraine. So the question for me is there any consequence that Russia and Putin, the leader, will suffer for these acts of crimes against humanity?
Well, I doubt if they'll suffer for it other than just be killed by their own or something. The war, I hope they lose. Russia loses. They're showing unbelievable brutality. And I think part of the whole goal with the way in which Russia does things, you either submit to us, we're coming for your country, or we'll beat you into dust and you'll never recover. And they want to beat them into dust. If they're not going to win this war, that's one of the reasons I think it's possible they will use a nuclear bomb in some area to just make sure they get their revenge and then they're getting beaten into dust. That's my opinion. And so Putin needs to be charged, so the generals need to be charged. They're deliberately inflicting hardship on the people who aren't even carrying guns, just going to ruin it. You don't go with us, we'll ruin you. So the next country they decide to go in, Switzerland or wherever they decide to go into, you better just let us walk in or we'll annihilate you completely.
So do you think that if that is the message that is being sent by Putin's army in Ukraine by blowing dams and flooding farmland and agricultural production areas, creating food shortages, not just in Ukraine, but maybe food shortages in third world countries that rely on Ukraine's food exports.
Not to mention energy. Those dams were also energy producing, I believe.
And
hydro.
I think the waters are approaching the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station and may affect that production. So a lot of things get complicated. Will there be a price to pay? What about the consequence of the, let's go on just to talk about the counteroffensive. Is there any evidence that you've seen of a counteroffensive? Have you seen stuff that you didn't think you'd see?
I haven't seen things that I didn't think I'd see, but I know that Ukraine's using high technology drones to be able to pick off leaders and stuff within the armies. And I know part of their plan is to pick off the leaders and scare the army to not die, but to run away. Go back home. Run away. Go home.
Here's one of the things that amazes me is that this war has all been fought within the boundaries of Ukraine until now. I think we're seeing some excursions where things are blowing up in Russian territory.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about it to wonder why the United States insists that you don't go into Russia. I don't know enough about it. I would think that, eye for an eye, that kind of thing, that you would want to really leave your mark on some of the southern, maybe even a threat of taking some of their land. That's what they do. So, hey, if we win, we take your land and push that border even further. Maybe take up the spot that the Russia's already annexed down in the south. Just take that much to the north then. Into Russia, we'll say we'll swap. That'll be our land. You get that land. Something like that. But the United States really doesn't want Ukraine to go in to Russia,
which is why they.
And I think Russia needs to be slapped in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you can't just continue to attack a country and expect the country to be only defensively.
Just receiving.
Yes. Take a licking and keep on ticking. That was Timex. It's not Ukraine. So what's going on?
Yeah, well, I think eventually it's got to come to some point where the people of Russia got to understand there's something to lose here.
Will that happen only when a missile from Ukraine lands in Moscow and makes the war real to people who are living in otherwise unaffected, delightfully oblivious ways of living in Russia, while a brutal attack, brutal attack by the Russians in Ukraine has devastated that country?
Oh yeah, it's going to be. They're going to need help to recover, like unbelievable help to recover, and I hope they get some of that help from Russia, to recover this nation.
How would you see that?
I don't know. I don't know. United Nations trials. You owe them $45 billion, and you got 50 years, trillion dollars to you got 50 years to give that over, and here's what we're expecting once a year. Russia is, they're used to taking a beating and just coming back and beating people again. So I don't think there's much we can do about a country like that. He tells his people what it's going to say. That drone that went right into the Moscow there just before their celebration day.
Right to the Kremlin.
Right to the Kremlin, but that might have been the Kremlin doing that themselves.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, what it does is, you see, what it did do is we know that celebration of military arms was very sparse.
Yes.
And it was sparse, and they say it's because people stayed away. We had to stay because of the danger, not because we've depleted everything fighting Ukraine. So there's all kinds of this mislying stuff.
It is propaganda extreme on both sides.
The whole world is smothering in this crap. What is true? We don't even know anymore.
Well, we are really in the Hobbit Hole studio, really in-person meeting after a 2-week hiatus, and we're talking about some serious things. Do you think Putin will show up at The Hague in the International Criminal Court with all the charges from his butchering of civilians to the breaking of the dams? Will he be held accountable internationally at The Hague?
I didn't even know that was happening.
Oh,
I didn't know. No, I didn't know.
There is a case being mounted.
But is there a date?
The Hague, no.
Oh, okay.
And the question I would have is, can you do it in absentia? Don't have to have him present.
Well, you're going to have to. I can't see him going.
I can't see him going either. And I don't even see a video conference call being...
No, I mean, he's going to say he's done everything right. This is all Ukraine. This is NATO.
Yeah.
NATO did this, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And Lord only knows, if NATO eventually wanted this to happen. I mean, it's a great way to deplete Russia's army. For what, though? For what?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have any plans, as far as I know, to attack Russia. Or do we? I don't know.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah, oh, boy, yeah. I mean, we don't know anymore, do we? Because you realize that talk's out there.
Yeah.
That we're actually got a plan to take Russia. Well, I think we got our own problems with China right now, as opposed to worrying about going into Russia. And haven't they withdrawn people from Taiwan now? The United States told us people to leave Taiwan.
I have not heard.
Yeah, so I think that's what I heard last.
Kim Jong-un is firing missiles.
Well, I mean, whether they win or lose, they're so close to Taiwan. It's going to be a horrible.
Who are you talking about? Whether
China.
they win or lose?
China.
Oh, you're talking about a hypothetical war over Taiwan.
Yeah, but I mean,
is
it true that, we should have done this before the show so you could look it up, but is it true that the United States has told people to get out of Taiwan? I
don't know. Where did you
And
hear
right
that?
now we've got the, what's his name, the defense minister going to China, I think today.
Oh, Secretary Blinken.
Blinken is going to China, I think, today to talk to them. And because China's still upset about us, the United States taking down the 3-bus big balloon. I don't know why they'd be upset. What would you have done?
It's over your territory.
Yeah.
It's over your airspace. Okay, so we don't know some of this stuff, but we do know that China is a concern. We saw a videotape of the Chinese warship cutting across the bow, which in Navy terms is something you don't do.
Well, the jet. You saw the jet.
Oh,
Buzz the American jet.
Yes.
That's another thing you don't do.
Yeah.
That was in international space.
Yes, but Russians do that to the Americans all the time.
Yeah, well, there is.
They're all idiots.
They got to watch it because, aren't they picking people off the street and saying you're now a pilot?
I have not heard about that.
No, I'm kidding. But they do that with Army, didn't they? Weren't they going to the jails and saying you're now in the Army?
Russia or China?
Russia this time. Russia.
Okay. Yes, they were. The Wagner Group was.
Just go to jail and take them
out.
Promising them everything and giving them nothing. Probably.
In terms of Ukraine. Crimea is one of the talking points, and the sticking point is also Crimea. The sticking point being that Russia will not stop the war unless they get to keep Crimea. Ukraine has argued through Zelensky they will not stop the war until Crimea is reunited with Ukraine.
Well, that would be like saying Southern Ontario, we'll stop the war, but we keep Southern Ontario. I mean, it would be that much, like one of our biggest tourist areas and everything else. What Russia wants to keep is a very important chunk of land, which is not theirs. You know, I mean, we can go back 3,000 years, and we can make up all kinds of rules about who Canada should belong to. I mean, what if all of a sudden, I wouldn't put it past him, if Trump got in power and said, no, we want the St. Lawrence. The St. Lawrence is ours. It's not yours. We want that.
That's right.
And Quebec is, that southern part of Quebec is no longer Quebec. It is Quebecia.
Or it's going to be part of Maine.
Maine, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Upper New York or something.
Yeah, so the whole idea of annexing another country's territory and not respecting sovereign borders, and again, we're just saying the traditional borders. The map that Putin used to say these territories belong to Russia is
It's
not
like Trump writing the hurricane.
with the Sharpie.
Yeah, with the Sharpie. No, it's going there. I told you. That's where it's going.
Yeah, so we got some things that need to be resolved. Will diplomacy play a role in the end of the war, the Russian war of aggression on Ukraine?
If there's an end.
Trudeau has taken ownership of, and is selling the Russian airplane that's parked at the Toronto Pearson Airport.
Yes. Beautiful
And
plane, by the way.
It's a great one, made in Ukraine, apparently.
Oh, really?
So there's the irony of all these things. But do you see that more countries seizing Russian oligarch assets as part of a way of ending the war?
I don't know. Yes.
Paying for the war. Punishment.
Maybe paying for the war, yeah.
Okay. More on other things in another episode of The Jim and Terry Show coming up. Stay tuned. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Bye-bye.